Hi, I'm Carrie, the dyer behind Sego Fibers, and today I'm going to take you behind the scenes on how I create a yarn collection.
Gravel road, I've been asked to slow down. Fireplace, do you know how? Piles of paper, my desk is out. Who will care for the world out? Rest with me, close to curtains, brew some herbal tea.
Hi, I'm Carrie, and today we have a special video where I'm going to bring you behind the scenes on how I create a yarn collection from inspiration to the final palette of colors, and I'm excited to take you along the way. It's been a year-long process for me. I learned so much in all the experimenting, the tweaking, all the mistakes and mishaps, and all the things. So I'm just very excited to share what I've learned. Yeah, let's get started. First, a little bit about me. I am a stay-at-home mom in Salt Lake City, Utah. I went to school to be a graphic designer back in the day, and that was my career for about 13 years. So I'm drawing on all that experience to help me with being creative on demand, color theory, looking for inspiration, all of these things. So I'm pulling all of that into this collection experiment. So I'm hoping I can kind of share with you what I've learned and also what I have found really useful so that whatever you need to be creative for, hopefully you'll find something in this video that you will find helpful too. Whether it's yarn dyeing or watercolor or combining colors for any project you're working on. Hopefully the inspiration process and the color theory discussion that we'll get into, hopefully there'll be something useful for you here. Over the last few years, I've tended to have a primary project that I work on throughout a year and just use it as a chance to experiment and explore and try new things. So back in 2020, I started out with yarn dyeing. I got the stuff and learned basics and created some fun colors. I learned generally what works, and it was a lot of fun, and I worked on that on and off for a couple years. And then in 2023, I got really curious about the process of creating a yarn. So my goal was to create a local to me yarn. So since I'm here in Utah, I looked for a local farm and found one in Moab and bought a couple fleeces from the farmer there and had them spun here in Salt Lake. And I dyed some of the skeins and left some natural. And it was a really fun process. I loved meeting all the people involved. It was such a good experience, and I definitely plan on doing that some more again. This year, my project was to create a yarn collection. I wanted to dive deep into color theory and get a lot more practice at getting the kind of color that I'm looking for, rather than just throwing things in the pot and see what happens. I want to pick a color in my head and see if I can replicate that on yarn, and also create a palette of 10 colors that go really well together that I can all use in the same project if I want. When I first started thinking about creating a yarn collection, I had a couple colorways already in mind that I was really interested in dyeing. The first one is a variegated style yarn. Honestly, it was based on my daughter's favorite colors, which are pink, purple, orange, and yellow. And I was thinking, man, in kind of like a pastel watercolor crazy kind of way, that could be cool. Like, I'm having like wandering flock visions here. Not that I can dye like her, but that's kind of where I was going in my mind. So that was one idea I had. And then the other idea was this beautiful, lovely tonal dark green. I could just imagine the Busan sweater by Egyo Knit in this. It's like, oh, I really just want that sweater in this color. It's just in my head. I've got to make this. So I started out thinking about a collection with those two in mind. They're not actually related colors, and they didn't really come from a particular source. And so They're unrelated. I'm generally interested in these. Okay, graphic designer, red flags. This is not how we go about looking for inspiration for a collection. It's been interesting being in a creative career. Like, you learn over time, like you probably learn in school too, but especially through experience, you learn how to be creative on demand, and you learn what methods work and what don't as far as finding inspiration and putting things together in a way that work. One of the 101 lessons I've had to learn the hard way multiple times is don't fall in love with a particular piece of the puzzle if you're trying to do something bigger than that. Get a big idea first and then work down into the details. So start with a big idea, a nice big cohesive thing that everything can fit into. Figure out what style pot you want your project to be and then put the details inside. So I don't know, that generally works. But I started out with some backwards ideas here. So starting out with some colors in mind and running with that is not necessarily the most helpful way to start looking to create a collection, but I threw caution to the wind and decided to give it a try anyway. You know, glutton for punishment. So the first thing I tried was to see if I could create some sort of theme around these two existing color ideas I had in my head. I was thinking maybe something like fairy forest themed, because then you could have some fun like pastel colors with some dark green of the forest. I don't know, but nothing I could really find along those lines was inspiring to me, and none of it was generating other color ideas. So that was really hitting a dead end. It really wasn't going anywhere. And in the back of my mind, I knew all along, like, I'm going about this all backwards. It's hard, man. So I finally faced up to reality, and I had to face the hard truth that if I'm going to create an actual cohesive collection, I need to be willing to make some hard sacrifices and set these ideas on a shelf. I can always return back to them later. Even if they don't fit in this collection, I can always dye them. It doesn't have to be part of this collection. I can come back to it. I do want to create a cohesive palette, so let's start looking for inspiration in the right order. Big picture. Okay. One of my favorite and most reliable ways to find inspiration, especially for color, is looking at existing artworks. So whether it's a movie or a photograph or a painting or a book or any like a series of paintings that go well together, whenever you can define some scope and limit your options, like I'm only going to look at this photograph and pull colors from here because I like this photo and all the colors seem to work really well. Anything you pick from that photo, any colors or combo of them are going to go well together because you already like the photograph as a whole. Same thing with a movie. One scene may be dominant in a particular color, another scene may have another one. Most likely, if you take screenshots of all the different frames that you like, the colors in the movie are going to translate well as a palette. And same thing with books. And that's where I decided to look for inspiration for this yarn collection. I chose one of my daughter's books, which is Lola Dutch by Kenneth and Sarah Jane Wright. I really recommend this book series. It's just super cute. We've really enjoyed it. And the illustrations in this book have been so good as inspiration because they're watercolor. That's one of the things I like about it. I'll show you the inside front cover. It's just so cute. I love it. The townhouses. So when you look at this part of the illustration and you see the washes of blue and gray, they're very tonal and there's lots of darker and lighter tones. There's moments of warmer kind of purplish navy hues in it, and then there's also moments of more greener, bit yellowy, more tealy blues in there, and gray neutrals, and there's more complicated colors in here, which I really like. And same thing with the pinks and the yellows and greens. There's lights and darks and midtones and all sorts of great spots for inspiration. And because there's so many different colors in this one picture, I could say, I want to make that light pink or this blue as opposed to this kind of grayish blue, or vice versa. Having more tonal colors in your inspiration source, gives you more to choose from while still being limited and not completely open-ended. So then I wrote down the 10 colors I wanted to pull from this book to create a yarn collection with. Then I moved to my computer. I used Affinity Designer to kind of mess around with the colors on my computer, but honestly, any free app is totally fine. Whatever way you want to play with color, whether it's colored pencils or markers or paint, or any way where you can mix colors and tweak them to look how you want them to look. What I did was just make a box and change the little color sliders and everything to make it the right kind of green that I was looking for. And you can do that in so many different apps. It doesn't have to be what I used. It could be on Canva or whatever free internet thing there is. I'm not sure. But just a way to kind of make a box with your color that you're looking for and kind of put them next to other boxes with other colors. That's what I used and found helpful. So after I colored in the 10 boxes with the colors I wanted to use in my palette, I was just looking at it and realized, wow, the colors in this book and the ones that I pulled from it are very primary. There's lots of reds, blues, yellows, and then just different shades and tints of those colors. So like reds and pinks are on the same spectrum. There's light blue, dark blue, yellow, light yellow, white. Like, it's really interesting. There's no orange, no purple, and there is green. That's like the only secondary color that's in here. But it was just really interesting. And it was a nice way to create a cohesive palette that wasn't all over the place. And it ended up creating a very classic palette as well, but I think some of the pinks and yellows help make it a bit more modern, which I love. I really am happy with how the collection has come together, and I love the palette even though it is pretty different than my initial ideas that I started with. So some of those initial ideas I had for colorways are still sitting up on my mental shelf, and I'll just have to revisit them at another time, and that's okay. But I love how modern and classic the color palette is, and I think it will be really versatile and awesome for creating a whole host of different kinds of knit and crochet projects. I'm excited to see these colors worked together in different projects, and I'm excited to see them put to use. So after I figured out on the computer what 10 colors I'm going to try and replicate on yarn, the next step was to look at dyes and swatches. Now that we've decided what 10 colors we're shooting for, it's time to figure out how to get there. And to do that, we're going to start by looking at some swatches. Now, whenever I get a new dye powder to try, I like to start by testing it on some 10-gram minis and making, swatches to see what the colors look like. Here's an example of some dye powder. I've gotten mine so far from Dharma Acid Dyes, but there are other brands that sell these too. I don't know that any are better than the other. They just have different colors, and it's just easier to buy them all from the same place for shipping and whatnot. But anyway, so this was the dark navy powder. So when I first got that, I found some 10-gram minis and I dyed each one with a different amount of dye. So I made it incremental. Here's my swatch cards. And so I think I started out with 2.5 milliliters, then 5 milliliters, and I think I just doubled it each time just to see what would happen. What are the colors like? And so after making these swatches, this is what the colors are like. And so how this is useful is when I'm, say, maybe I want to make a purple and I know I want to mix a red or a pink with some blue, I can see, okay, is this the kind of shade of blue that I want to include in this purple I'm going after? Okay, I like this lightness, I like this amount of blue more than this color because I think it would be too dark, or I really want a rich, cool purple, so maybe I'll pick one of these darker ones and put only a little bit of the pink or red in there, and this will give me a good starting place to start, experimenting to try and get that color I'm looking for. So these are some that I have for the blue, but I also have a whole box of swatches for all my other dyes, and sometimes I'll make swatches for particular blends. So sometimes I'll be in a really experimental mood and I'll say, hey, let's just see what kinds of oranges I can make with the dyes that I have. So I'll just make different combinations and I'll write down what I did on each of these swatch cards. That way I can go back and reference them later for future use. With this collection, I decided to experiment with 20-gram minis since they are easy to obtain and I don't have to wind them myself. So I got a bunch of those to practice with. And the first color that I'm going to go after for this collection is the red, because that's the one that's been most in my head. I have been thinking about it the most, and I have a more specific idea of what I'm looking for. So I'm just going to start with the easy one that I really am thinking about. And so I've been really inspired by this dark red. There's lots of tonality in her shirt. And then also this really bright solid red in the lettering at the top. And so I've got some swatches of different pinks and reds, and I can just say, hey, what might be a good starting point? What could work? And then they are different. So we'll just have to check them out and see. All right, now I'm going to take you over to a counter where I have a little setup where I'll show you with an overhead view all the different dyes I'm using and testing with, and I'll show you amounts and see like little tweak here, little tweak there, what's the result as we try and really nail down the right colors for this collection. All right, so here's my setup where I'm going to show you the different dyes I'm using. For example, here's one of them. And so I have a bunch of different little jars of dye with color in it, so you can see how I move them around, and these lines are to indicate how much I'm using. So if I'm using a lot, it's all the way up here. If I'm using barely any, it's just down here. And so I'm going to show you just how I move all the different colors around and tweak them to get slightly different colors in the final skein. All right, so like I said, the first color we're going to start with is the red, just because it's been on my mind the most and I'm the most excited about it. So I would like to take a closer look at these. So this red is a bit brighter, and this red has more tonality and lights and darks inside of it. It's just very pretty. So I would like to kind of mesh these two reds, and it's kind of similar also on the spine there. So that will be our starting point. The first red I'm going to use is this really warm red. It's almost orangey, and I'm going to start with about this much of it. And the next red I'm going to use is a cooler, more truer red, about twice as much of this truer red. What I'm looking for mainly is a very true red that slightly leans warm. So I'm only using a little bit of this one, but I like the brightness that it brings. And I'm also going to add a little bit of navy. So that's going to be way down here. And I'm adding the navy to kind of bring a little bit more tonality that I saw in the shirt. So to add some depth, but not too much. I don't want it to be overly blue or purple, but just a bit to add some nice depth to it. And so with this formula, I got this color red. It's a nice true red, and there's a little bit of tonality in there. It's not like bright in your face, but it still leans warm as well. So I do like it, but you know, I can't just say yes the first time. Let's see what else we can do. All right, so for my next experiment, I decided to keep the reds the same because I liked the depth of color on those. And I decided to double the amount of navy I was using, as well as add a little bit of purple just to see what that does. So slightly more purple than the navy. The reason for this is just to see, what if this is a little bit too orange? What if adding a little bit of purple will tone the orange down a little bit? And we'll see how that goes. Okay, with this formula, I got this color. It's definitely a lot cooler. I would even say it leans pink. It's a pinker red. Kind of makes me think about Valentine's Day. It's like right in between the two. All right, so there's those two. And it's definitely darker. And honestly, I don't know that I want it to be that dark. So I'm gonna go back to this one a little bit. I'm gonna take this purple away because I don't think that was doing anything for us. I don't want a pinky red. I want a more truer red. So let's see what we can do with just these colors again. So I'm again going to leave the reds the same because I'm still happy with those, and I'm only tweaking the coolness and the depth. So I took away the purple and I'm just going to reduce by 1 the navy. That's just a very slight difference, but it does make a difference. And we get this color. So definitely not as pink as the last one, but it is darker than the first. So let's see them all together. All right, here's the first one, the second, and the third. So this one is more orangey. This one is a bit more cooler cherry red. And this one I still think is too dark and too pinkish purple. Honestly, I'm still the happiest with the first one. So this is gonna be my winner for now. I'm gonna set this in my almost final section and have a little pile of the ones I'm most happy with. And I'll look at the end, look over everything and see if they all work together, if there's anything further I need to tweak. I will often try and get my colors about 80% of the way there or 90% finalized, and then move on to the next color. And then at the very end, I'll take another pass through and just see if there's any final tweaks that need to be made to make them really cohesive and nice together. Let's see how our red matches up with the book cover. I like the warmth with the lettering, and I also like the depth and various shades with her shirt. And so I think this is a great match for the red. One tip that helps make a color palette cohesive is using the same kinds of colors in every color of your color palette. So if I'm using a bit of blue or orange or something in my purple, or I can also use a little bit of that in my yellow or my green or something like that. And so if I keep a few colors cohesive and consistent throughout all of them, then by the end, when I have the whole collection, they will more likely go together. It doesn't need to be a hard and fast rule, but it's a really good starting place. The next color I'm going to try and dye is a medium pink. And the color I'm most inspired by is this section of the townhouse, where it's a little bit deeper. It's still warm, but it has some cooler tones. And yeah, I like the mid color there. So let's try and see if we can get that color. Now I'm going to start off with some of the same colors that I used in making the red. So here's that warm red again. And this one, since we're only doing pink, I'll just use a little bit and I'll stick it right there. I'll use that warmer, truer one, a little bit more of this one. We'll include the navy as well, just a little bit. And then we'll add that purple again because I would like it to be a little bit cooler. Now it's kind of a warm purple, kind of a mauve-y color. We'll go ahead and do this much of that, just to warm it up just a smidge, a tiny bit of yellow. And here is the color pink that this one made. It's very pretty. I really like it. I'm definitely going to come back to this color because I can just imagine a whole sweater out of this. I'm very excited about this. However, it is too dark and maybe slightly a little too warm, I'm not quite sure, but it's definitely too deep of a color to match that section of the townhouse. So I'm going to keep going. I really love this. I will save this idea for later. All right, let's tweak this again. Let's just keep all of these colors, but reduce them by about half. Just move everything down a little bit. What will that do? That creates this color, so it's much lighter. That's good. You can see that there. However, I don't know, maybe still a bit dark, and maybe we can get a softer pink. Let's try again. I'm also going to mix the navy and the yellow, and we'll see what else we can work with. All right, for my third try, I'm going to reduce these reds even further. So there's barely any in there. I'm going to keep this one the same. Then I'm also going to add this orange because I think the yellow was a bit too powerful, and it's a rather powerful yellow and it's less dispersed, and so it's a bit more of a shock. And so I think if I do an orange instead of a yellow, it'll still warm it up, but it won't be quite as shocking of a tone. So with this batch, it should be lighter because I reduced the reds, and I do get a lighter color pink. See the difference here? It is lighter. However, I think it might be a little bit too bright, too much like a piece of candy or taffy or something, so let's keep going. Let's reduce these reds even more. They're hardly there. And I'll reduce the purple. And this time I'm going to bump up the orange. Let's warm it up and see what happens. It is lighter. So reducing the reds definitely lightened it. And that orange that I'm using is a rather muted orange. And so it's helping even to make a muted pink color. I'm liking where this is going. However, it might actually be too muted. And the color is a little bit dull. I mean, it's beautiful, but maybe not quite the one I'm wanting for this. See how this one is nice and bright and this one is duller? I think I'm kind of struggling with these reds. So let's try a different tactic. Let's remove these reds. How about, instead of red, we use pink. So this is a super light pink, kind of a candy color pink, very light and subtle. So let's just do a little bit of that one, a little bit of pink, and then we'll bump up these a bit. Bring this one down. Let's keep it a bit more subtle. What does this give us? This will give us this really light kind of pearly pink color. It's a really pretty color, but what if we make it a little bit warmer and a little bit brighter, but keep the lightness? So for the next try, I'm going to bump up the base pink that we're using. I'm going to reduce the purple a little bit, and I'm going to bump up the orange quite a bit. Let's see if this one will get us a warmer color. And it does. It's still nice and light. It's a little bit deeper, but now I think it is too of a peach color. It's very nice, but probably too warm. So let's try again. I'm going to bump up the light pink all the way up here, keep the purple the same, and then I'll reduce the orange down a bit. And what will this give us? Oh yeah, this I think is what we're going for. It has warmth and some depth. You can see some tonality in there from the oranges and the pinks. Now let's hold it up with the townhouse and we'll see how well it matches. I think that's pretty good. Maybe slightly warmer, but there's enough variation in here that I think it'll match really well. And here are all of our skeins together, so you can see how each of them are. My inspiration color for a light pink is also from the townhouse. I would like to replicate some of these warmer light tones, keep it a bit more blush, lighter, warmer, kind of like a barely there warm pink. Let's see if we can do that. First, I'm going to start with this light candy pink again, and I'll bring about this much in, and then I will bring back that purple, about the same amount, and then I think I'll bring in a little bit of yellow, and I'll just use a teeny bit of it. And see, since I'm shooting for such a light shade, I do want it to be warm. We'll see what this yellow does. We'll give that a try. With this formula, we got this color. It's really pretty warm. It's like a sandy pink, quite nice. However, I do think it is too warm. So it's too yellow, so let's try again. All right, this time I'll keep these the same and do even less yellow and see what happens. Better, not quite so yellow, but still overall has a tint of yellow that I still think is a bit too strong. It's not pink enough for what I'm looking for. So this time I'm going to get rid of the yellow, confirmed it's not working for the pinks, and I will bring back this orange, bring a bit more of that. Because orange isn't as potent as yellow, I'm going to use more of it, and we will see how it overall blends out. We got this color pink, which is definitely not too yellow. It's actually quite pink, but I believe it is too dark and too close to that medium pink that we just made. So I'm going to try and lighten this up a bit, and I want it a bit more blush. This is cooler than what I'm looking for. So for my next try, I'm going to reduce these, and I'm going to reduce this one also. What will this make? That we get this nice color. It's definitely in the right direction. It has a better tone and brightness, but I would still like it to be a bit warmer. Let's try again. For this next one, I'll bring the light pink a little bit down. We'll leave purple the same, and I'll bump up the orange. And with this, we get this color, and I love it. I love this color. It's a good amount of blush. That's pretty good. However, it's not quite light enough. I still think I need a better contrast between this light pink and the medium pink, because that medium pink we made does err on the side of light. So for better contrast, let's reduce this pink again. It's hardly there. We'll reduce the purple, and I'll reduce the orange. How do we make that lighter? And here we have this beautiful, barely there blush pink. I would even call it like a neutral pink. It's quite pretty. I think that will be a really nice contrast to the medium pink and a really great neutral pink that I could use for pretty much anything. I like this color a lot. Let's see how it holds up to the townhouse inspiration. Oh yeah, definitely getting the background color of the townhouse wall there. The next color we're going to try and achieve is brown. So Bear in this story shows up in a variety of different tones. So like on these pages, he's a bit more orange and kind of yellowy. So lots of yellow, warm undertones. This one, he's a little bit cooler. There again, he's warmer. This one's probably my favorite. I like how dark and light he is. I like the tonality in that one. And then this one, I like how he leans a bit red, and there's also some dark in there, and it's a little bit less over yellow. So I'm gonna try and go for this color. However, at this point, when I first started dyeing for the brown, I didn't have a super solid, clear idea of the exact kind of brown I was looking for. I was mostly shooting for that picture that I saw. I'll go into this more in a different section, but what I was going for with my eyes was not matching up with what my gut instinct was telling me to do. And so I was trying to dye for two different directions, and that will become apparent with the many different skeins that I tried to make. So, all right, first try. Let's go for that color that we saw in the picture. So the first one I'm going to use is this really light brown. It's a warm toned, lighter brown, and I'll go ahead and use a lot of it because I do want a deeper color and I want this to be kind of the base we're starting with. And I can see from the photos that it's quite warm, so I'm gonna do a fair bit of yellow actually. And I will also bring in some red for those red undertones, but just a bit. And I'm gonna bring in some purple. Again, for depth and warmth, this is a really warm kind of mauvey purple, so I think it'll bring some good layers in there. And I'm also going to add this really dark brown as a contrast. It's quite saturated, but it's a slightly warm, very dark brown. So I'll just use a little bit of that as well. And what this will give us is this color. And it's interesting, as soon as I dyed it, I realized, hey, I think that matched the bear pretty well that I saw in the pictures, but I don't actually want a warm brown. I want to wear like a really more muted or dark or cooler brown. How can I get it darker and cooler but still kind of match the book good enough? First try, there we go. Next, I decided to bring this light brown down, and I reduced the yellow by a lot because I'm trying to get rid of that warmth. And again, removing warmth, the red by a bit, and reduced the warm purple. And I also reduced the dark brown so that it wouldn't be so dark. And that gave us this color. So it's definitely a lot lighter. However, it has like weird yellow splotches in it that I'm really not liking, and then there are pinker moments, and I just did not like the general feel of this color. I decided to get rid of the purple because that's doing some weird pinkish things, I think. And then I decided to keep the light brown where it is, reduce the yellow even more, and then I'll leave these two the same. What will this do? Well, it looks very similar, to be honest. So I am still getting some weird pinky tones and some yellow splotches. Not a fan. It looks too cool and pinkish red. Those are quite similar. This one's more yellow, this one is more reddish pink, but still not what I'm going for. Let's try something else. Let's get rid of this red. I'm gonna bring back that purple because it really didn't seem to affect much when I removed it, and we'll try again. So for this one, I'm gonna bump up brown again. I'm gonna bump up the yellow a little bit. I'll leave purple kind of where I had it before, and then I'll bump up this dark brown a little and see what this does for us. So it's a lot less red, which is good. So removing that red did help. It's still yellower. It's kind of like a goldish color. It even leans a little bit green, which I don't like the green tones in it. So let's keep going. For my fifth try, I'm going to keep all of these the same, but add the red back in to see if we can warm that up. I'll just do a little bit of that, and that gives us this color. It's warmer, but in the the wrong kind of way. I still think it's too pink. I don't think that red is doing us any favors. So let's try again. I'm gonna get rid of this red and let's add in this orange to add a different kind of warmth. Maybe this will warm it up in a different way than the red does. So for this one, I'm going to bump up the underlayer of brown quite a bit. I'll keep yellow the same, keep these the same, but then I'll bring a little bit more of that orange in there, and that will give us this color. So it is softer, but it still feels too yellow and not quite right. Let's just keep going. So for my next one, I will keep the light brown the same. I'll drop down the yellow. I will nix the purple because I don't think that's doing us any favors with the warmth. Maybe something's going on there. Keep the dark brown the same, and then I will bump up the orange. What will this get us? All right, it's warmer and it's not terribly yellow, but it's way too red. I don't like the pink tones in this. It's looking more like a, I don't know, it's almost like a terracotta pink brown. Clay color maybe? Anyway, it's not what I'm going for. It definitely leans way more pink. So let's try again. Let's keep this brown the same. I'll increase the yellow a little bit to kind of counteract that pink, and let's bring down the orange. All right, so it is not so pink, which is good. It's more of like a light, like a very like light milk chocolate almost, but maybe a little too red for that. But I don't know, I am just struggling here. At this point in the process, I told myself to take a break from the brown, dye some other colors, come back to this later, because I had, I guess, this color in my head, like a really vague idea for a color, more of a feeling of a cooler brown. And I was thinking, no, I can't do a cooler brown because the brown in the book is quite warm. And my instincts are telling me to go cool brown because I like cool browns. However, that doesn't actually match the book. So because my goals are conflicting, I'm trying to match something in the book with a vague idea of what I want for the color, and those goals are not the same things. So I'm getting all of these results that aren't working for anything. They're not matching the book, and they're not matching what the color I'm trying to get in my head. And so they're just all in between, and none of them are working. Finally, I realized when I realized I'm really looking for a cooler brown and I want it to be cool, but the book is actually really warm, I realized I already have a brown that I've dyed before, and my instinct was to try and dye this color again. This is my color Truffle, and it's a really cool dark brown with like mauvey purple undertones. I love this brown. I think it's great, but it doesn't work at all with the book. It's not at all that color. It could be some of the outlining of her hair perhaps, but I'm really trying to get more of that color. So thankfully realizing that my gut instinct was to make this brown because I really love it, it was really helpful to realize that that was different from what I was trying to do with matching the book. So I really just had a really vague idea in my head that did not get fleshed out well enough. And so it was helpful for me to kind of wrap my head around this color, use some words to describe it, and let that be my starting point to kind of fix this idea. So one of the words that helped me reorient to this color and get the cool brown out of my head was caramel. And so caramel brown, how do I get that? All right, so with the idea of caramel in my head, I decided to start again with this idea of brown. So I started with yellow as a base, actually quite a bit of it. And then I decided to add in some pink because that will help warm it up. This is a fairly bright pink. And then to balance it out a little bit, I decided to add some orange. And so let's see what color this sort of thing makes. And we got this sort of color. Now there's definitely some spots where it wasn't fully mixed. I still think there's too much yellow in this, so that was definitely too much. And I don't like the clumping in there with the different colors, the pinks and the yellows. Let's just tone this back a bit, and instead of mixing some colors, let's bring some browns back in. So for the next one, I decided to reduce the yellow by quite a bit. Same with the pink, same with the orange. Let's bring in this light warm brown and see where that takes us. That gives us this color. Still too yellow, but not warm enough. So not enough red in there. But it is lighter, which is good. So this time I reduced the yellow even more, up to the pink a bit. Left the orange the same and the brown the same. So less yellow, more pink. Definitely got that. Too warm. How about just a little bit less? Let's see, we'll keep yellow where it is. We'll reduce the pink because that was too warm and leave the rest. So we're only reducing the pink a little bit. Still too pink. Too yellow, too pink. I'm not liking these. So let's just start over. It's not working. This is just one thing not working after another. So let's change some of our dyes. So we will keep the yellow but reduce it. Let's get rid of this pink, get rid of the orange, keep the light brown the same. Let's bring in some red, just a little bit of purple, and a little bit of this really dark brown. It's better. It's not quite so pink, which I like. It's just still not working. It's just really not working. So these are the ones that I dyed keeping the word caramel in mind. These are the ones I dyed when I was first thinking about brown. Out of all of these different colors, I still think the one that matches the book the best is the first one that I dyed. Let's take a look and see if what my hunch tells me is right. If the first one that I did out of all of this is the closest to the bear. Yep, turns out I'm actually pretty happy with my first go. I thought it was too much, too warm, a little too dark, a little too something. I had just vague ideas about it. But actually the first one I did was the best. So we'll save this one. And this will be a good lesson to me to have a more specific idea in my head before I start dyeing. The next color I want to dye is one I'm actually super excited about. Next to the red, this one is one I've just been dreaming about. I want to make a color that is this light blue gray with a little bit of purple undertones. At different points it leans greenish, silver, gray, blue, purple, like all of those tones. And I just love this color here on the inside of the cover. So this is what we're going to try and replicate. However, one of the tricky things about dyeing is that for very nuanced colors like this, you often have to mix a lot of colors, and that can be tough. For example, and you're also limited to what dyes you have. I only have 2 blue dyes. I have a really dark navy blue that leans kind of purple, and then I have this really, really, really bright, strong, very powerful blue that easily takes over everything. But there's no way that I can get the navy to be light. And so I'm thinking like, okay, I've really got to use this really bright, powerful blue, but how do I tone it down? Here, I'll show you. It's this color. It's this color here. How on earth do I tone this down to get a really pale color? And then finally, I had an aha moment when I remembered color theory. And I remembered if I take a color and add its opposite, then I get a much more muted shade, because whenever you mix opposite colors on the color wheel, you end up with brown. And you can get different sorts of browns or different sorts of neutrals, maybe even gray. And so I'm thinking, okay, perfect, I can tone down this blue with orange, and let's see what happens. All right, so to start out, I'm gonna start with kind of a very neutral beigey base. And so I'll add this cool dark brown, just a teeny tiny bit of it. Then I will bring in a little bit of black, kind of gray it out, just a tiny bit. Then I will add this very blue-green color. I'll add some navy for some depth, and that will also bring in a little bit of purple. I'll bring in my bright blue, very little of this one because it's quite strong. I'll bring in this nice warm mauvey purple, and then I'll bring in my orange to help wash everything out and make it a bit more neutral. So there's probably more of the orange than anything. And so what will this give us? All right, so I'm really happy with the muted tones. I like what I'm seeing here. It's not too bright, there's hints of it, but overall it's still too dark. So let's see if we can lighten that a bit. And I'm also going to get rid of the black since I'm trying to lighten it. So let's increase the brown a little bit to kind of mute it some. I'll decrease the greenish blue, decrease navy, decrease the bright blue, and decrease purple and orange as well. So overall, mostly getting rid of a bunch of dye. So pretty much the same, but still a bit too dark. And I'm wondering if it's a little bit too greenish in places, a little bit too purple in some other places. Let's see what a few other changes we'll make. So for this next one, I'm going to get rid of this greenish blue color, and I'm going to get rid of the navy. Bring back the black, because I think I like where the gray is taking us. Let's reduce the brown. We've brought back black back in. Keep blue the same, and we'll keep purple the same, and we'll increase the orange. Ah, it looks brighter. So that looks good. I like that it's brighter. It's still a bit too bright, perhaps a little bit too splotchy. I do like the lightness, but maybe we can make it a bit more muted. I don't know, it still leans a very tad bit green, but I do like that it's lighter. For the next one, the brown the same, black the same, reduce the blue a tad, keep purple the same, and reduce the orange. All right, I really like how light this is, but it's still leaning a bit too purple. I'm seeing the influence of the mauve and that orange the muted orange color a bit too much, so it's too warm. Let's see what we can do, but I do like how light that is. I want a bit more blue than that. All right, so I'm keeping some of these the same, reducing the purple and reducing the orange. And this is great. Okay, I'm really happy with this color. So it's still light blue. I still see bare hints of the purple in there, which I like. So let's see how these look against the inside of the book. Let's compare. It's very slightly greenish with the moments, but not overly, and it's not splotchy. I like that there are slight moments of the blue and the purple hints in there, and I just love, like in some lights, this could even read as silver. So I'm extremely happy with this. I loved figuring out that mixing the bright blue with that orange could really tone the color down a lot. Keeping with the blue theme, let's do a dark blue. All right, so the inspiration I have for the dark blue is on this really cute page. I love these deeper blues in here. What I may end up doing is trying to go for a blue that's like this, but maybe a little bit darker. I really like that color. So let's see if we can create that. It'll be kind of tricky because there's lots of teals and greeny blues in here as well, but this blue tends to run a little bit pinker, but not too much. So the tricky part will be finding the right balance between green and pink in this blue. All right, to start, I will start with some depth with a navy, and we'll bring some brightness with bright blue, but just a bit because this one's pretty strong. And then for the greeny blue parts, I'm going to use this color. It's fairly muted, but still it's muted, so I'll use a lot of it. We'll see where that takes us. I'll bring in some purple, and I'll bring in some orange. So this is to give us depth. This will bring brightness. This will add the greeny aspect to the color and lean it slightly teal. This will bring the pinky part of the blue and hopefully help balance out the green a little bit, and the orange will also balance out the teal to hopefully not make it too bright and strong. What this gets us is this color. It's really lovely. It's like a really nice dark teal. I quite like it, but it's probably slightly too teal, and I would like it a bit darker. So let's see what we can do. Let's bump up the navy, and we'll get rid of the green because I think it's over tealing it. We'll leave the bright blue the same, we'll leave the purple the same, and I'll bump up the orange and see what this gets us. So definitely a lot less teal. It's probably too purple now, and so I don't like that, kind of swung it too far. So let's see what we can do. Let's bring this back. I'm gonna bring it back a lot, and let's bump up the navy. This will make it a little darker and add some depth. I'll keep the brightness of the bright blue. The greeny blue will bring the teal back and let it not be too pink. And I'll bump up the purple because we're overall making things darker, and I'll bump down the orange so that it doesn't get too muddy. And we get this color. This is a bit more muted than I actually want it to be, and I think I'm going to try and go for a truer blue. So I think bumping up the pink a little bit might help us get there. So this one might be a little bit too dark, and I'm going to try and go for a truer blue. So for this one, I'm going to bring down the darkness by reducing the navy. I'm going to bump up the brightness of the bright blue, bring down the green, bring down the purple, and I'll leave the orange where it is. Wow, this is brighter than I expected. So it's almost kind of like a crayon blue color. I like it. I kind of like where this is going. It's just a bit too bright. Let's see if we can tone it down. So let's bump up navy again. Let's just do that and keep everything else the same. And we get this color. This one I don't think is working. It is a little bit darker than the last one, but just this particular combo of dyes, I feel like I'm fighting the same battles over and over. So let's mix things up a bit. So I'm going to bring down the navy. I'm going to bump up the blue a little bit. I'm going to get rid of the greeny blue, keep purple where it is, bump up the orange. I'm going to bring in some pink. Let's see what this will get us. The reason I'm bringing in the pink is because of the pink versus green battle that's going on in this blue. I think the green was making everything just overall too teal, so I'm gonna add some pink and see if we can get a truer blue that matches that better. And with this blend, we get this color. So that definitely worked to get rid of the teal color, but now I feel like it's probably too pink. I like the darkness level of it, and I think it still has a tiny bit of teal tones in it from this bright blue, which leans a bit warm. So let's see if we can tone down the pink a little bit. So I'm going to keep everything the same except for the pink. Let's cut that. And then we get this color. And this one I am really happy with. I really like that. I still feel like there's a little hint of the teal in there, but it's still kind of a truer dark blue. And let's see how it will match with the book. So here's our page and here's our last skein that we did. Now it's not matching perfectly. This one is a little bit more muted, a little bit darker. However, I still think in different parts of the book, it still works. For example, in here it works rather well. In the blues in these paintings, there are still some tones that show up throughout the book. So maybe not 100% matched to the book, but it's still a very pretty color. So I'll put this on pause and I will take a second look at that after I dye the rest of the colors for the collection. And we'll see if overall it blends really well with the rest of the colors. And if so, we'll go with it. And if it doesn't go so well with the other colors, then we will go ahead and tweak it again. And here are all of our blues together. The next color I'm going to dye is the green. So I'm going to go for a medium green, and the green is based on the gator character in the book. So at different times he comes out cooler green, and others he's a bit warmer. And so there's a lot of flexibility in how I want to dye this color. So for example, he looks a bit more yellow there, and like the green of those cabinets is a bit cooler. Yeah, like that's a really great color there that I like. And this one here. So let's get started. So I'm going to start out with this bluish green, and it's not very powerful, so I'll just use this much. I want it to be enough to cover but not overpower. And this leans blue. So next I'm going to add a very warm green. This is a very yellowy green. I'll add about that much. And then I have this really dark, more saturated bluey green as well. So I'm going to add a little bit of that. Let's see what this will get us. So this is a really nice start. I really do like it. Good colors and tones in here. Good. I feel like they would match up well with the book. However, it's darker than I would like it to be. So let's see if we can lighten it up. Let's just reduce these by quite a bit. I've noticed that when trying to change colors in general, lighter or darker, you really almost have to like double or reduce by half in order to get an effect. So we'll try that. And we definitely got a much lighter color green. And I also think it's a little bit too cool. Like you can see warmer moments in it. However, I don't know. Let's make it a little bit warmer and darker. Let's see what we can get. We'll keep the bluey green the same. Then we'll increase the yellow to increase the warmth, and we'll keep that one the same. So it's definitely warmer. You can see a lot more yellow in here. I do think it is too yellow, and I still want it to be darker. Increasing the yellowy green didn't deepen it as much as I wanted. So let's bump all of these up. That one just a little bit, that one just a little bit. And now we have this color, and this one I'm actually really happy with. I think it is closer to the original in depth, but not quite as dark. And I really like the balance of warm and cool tones in here. So let's see what it looks like with our inspiration image. All right, so here is one of our pictures, and I'm really happy with how this came out. It matches a lot of the greens throughout the book, and I think it's a great representation of Gator. And here are all of our greens together. The next color for the collection that I'm going to dye is the yellow, and there's some yellow in here. This one definitely leans warm. There's lots of redder undertones. This one is a little bit of a clearer yellow that is still a little bit warm, but not quite so much. And let's see what else we can find. This yellow is nice and bright. I like this one. And this one also has lots of really nice shades. So lights and mediums and very saturated and paler yellows to choose from. For this color, I'm going to allow myself a little bit more freedom because one of my goals is to create colors that I would love a sweater out of each of the colors, and I would actually wear it. So that's one of my criteria for dyeing these. I don't want to just stick to the inspiration just because, like, I actually want the end color to be something I would love to wear. So I don't personally want to wear a very warm yellow. I want more of a neutral yellow that leans slightly cool. So I think I'm going to try and manage that to try and get a color that suits these colors enough but leans maybe slightly cooler than the inspiration would indicate. However, as a baseline to get started, I'm going to try and match the inspiration as close I can, just so I know what I'm working with and I can tweak it from there. So based on the colors from the book, my first guess at how to make it is to use this yellow color, surprise, surprise, and then I will bring in some of this orange to warm it up just a little bit. Then I'll tone it down slightly with a little bit of this light brown. And let's see what that gives us. Ooh, we definitely get a sunflower yellow. So, and it actually rather matches the book quite well. So kind of hit it on the nail on the head in that way. However, I know I don't actually want to end up with this color. I want it to be lighter. This is too saturated, too dark, and it's way too warm for the kind of yellow I'm looking for. I'm looking to push the inspiration to its coolest end. So let's see if we can do that. I'm going to get rid of the brown and bring in what looks like another blue. This one's tricky. It's kind of a bluish green. It looks a little bit different dyed than it does as liquid dye like this. Well, let's check it out. I'm going to reduce the yellow, reduce the orange, and just do the barest hint of this blue to cool it off. And we get this color, which I think is really great. I like the lightness. However, I think there's a chance that it could be still too cool. Maybe I went too far cooling it off. Let's try and warm it up again. I'll leave the yellow the same because I like that. I'll increase the orange to warm it up and then just leave it at that. All right, that's not bad. It's definitely warmer. I do like the lightness. That's pretty good, but maybe perhaps it's a little bit too buttery. Let's see if we can push it a little more. I'm going to reduce the yellow, reduce the orange, and I'm gonna swap out this one with the brown and just do a teeny tiny bit of that, and we'll see what we get. So it's definitely lighter, definitely softer, but this isn't like a real butter yellow. It's warmer than I'm looking for. So it is a very nice, light, soft yellow for springtime. Let's see what else we can do. Let's make it cooler than that. So I'm gonna bump up the yellow again, bump the orange back up, and I'm gonna swap this out again for this greeny blue, just a tad of it. So really for this, I'm almost matching this guy, going back to this one that I like, but making it less cool. Let's see what we can do. And I am really happy with this color. It is ever so slightly warmer than this one. I'm not sure if you can see that. Let's look at them all together and see. We've definitely got warmer ones and cooler ones in here. So let's see how my cooler than original yellow will pair with the book. So I do think it is not that bad, especially with the lighter areas. I think it matches pretty well. When the yellows get darker, you can tell that mine is a bit cooler, but I still think it's a pretty good match. I can still call it as part of the collection and inspired by the book, and it's definitely a tone that I would really enjoy wearing. The next color I would like to dye is a beige. So I'm thinking off-white, fairly neutral, not too warm, not too cool, just more of kind of like a marzipan, just very cool beige, off-white kind of color. There's a million different kinds of shades of white, so we'll just see what we can do. And one of the inspirations I am drawing from is from here. So Crane has some beige on his belly there. There's a hints of warm and cool, and just throughout some of the lighter tones in here. Like here, again, Crane is shaded with some cooler tones, so we will see if we can match any of that. Because this is such a light color, we're going to be using barely any dye, and I'm going to be using a lot of neutrals. So first I'm going to bring in this really dark, cooler toned brown. Tiny bit of that. I'm going to bring in a little bit of black to get the gray undertones. And then I'm going to bring in this warm, very light brown over here, and we'll see what this gets us. And with that, we have this really beautiful, more of a true marzipan color beige. This one is very nice, but it's probably a bit warmer than I'm originally going for. So let's see if we can cool this off just slightly. So for this one, I'm going to reduce the light brown and keep the rest the same, and I'm left with this color. And this, I think, is beautiful. It still has a hint of warmth, but it is not overly much. And out of curiosity with the dye process, these I had dyed with all of the dye at once. I just put all 3 dyes in, stirred it up, then dyed the yarn. I'm really curious what will happen if I do layers. So first I dye this one, then that one, then that one. Let's see how that turns out. And so this is the exact same amount of dye and colors as the previous one. However, curious if you can see, but this one looks slightly darker, it looks a lot duller, and I don't know, it doesn't quite have the vibrance and life of this one. So I don't know, that was just a very interesting experiment. This one had all the dyes at once, this one had them in layers. I like this one better, so we're gonna go with that. So let's see how our color matches up with our picture. I think that is quite nice. Very nice and lovely, a little bit warm, a little bit cool, and a nice neutral to go with all of the other colors we're making. So the last color for the collection is the really fun confetti style yarn that I am very excited to make. I love this style. I have great plans for using this method for all sorts of other colors. We will see, but right now, this is the beige with the yellow confetti on top. And this one is inspired by a picture towards the end. Let's see, aha! I just love this page with all the fairy lights, the white with the yellow spots. It's great. So this is kind of my inspiration for the color. So I'm going to start with our beige skein as a base. So I'll dye this exactly as normal as I would for the beige. And then I'm going to add yellow spots on top. And I'm going to use the same formula of yellow that I used for our yellow skein. That way they will match and be cohesive. So I'm starting with this beige as a base, and I want to add yellow spots on top, and we get this color. And so this yellow perfectly matches this one. And when you hold it up next to each other, you should be able to see that they match really well, and I really like that. However, when I just look at this by itself, I really wonder, like, can you see, is there enough contrast between the yellow and the beige? Can you see it, or is it too light? What if I add less water to this color and I make it a bit more saturated? For that one, we get this color. And you can notice yellow a whole lot more. It's more prominent, there's higher contrast. However, when I hold it next to the main skein or the tonal colorway of the same color, it looks different. This isn't light enough. It's closer to a sunflower yellow than it is this nice light bright yellow. So I think I will go with this one in case anybody wants to pair these skeins together and make a fun project, and that way they will match really well. And I think subtlety is not necessarily a bad thing. Time will tell. Really the only way to know if it works or not is to swatch it up. So we will see. So far I'll go with this one as the choice. All right, now that we have finished dyeing up all of the minis and all of the experiments for our colors, and we have final colors chosen, let's see what they look like all together. We have our red, our medium pink, light pink, brown, light blue, dark blue, green, yellow, beige, and our yellow confetti. I think they look really great together. I love this collection, and I feel like we're ready to dye them up on full skeins. All right, now that we have finalized our collection colors on mini skeins, it's time to dye them up on full skeins. So these were dyed on 20-gram minis, and now I want to dye them on 100 grams. So I'm just going to multiply the formula by 5 to make it scale appropriately. So let's give that a go and we'll see what happens. The first 100 gram skein we're going to dye is green. So this is our jumping off point. And so I scaled up the formula to accommodate a 100 gram skein. So we have our, about here, our yellowy green at a bit less, and our darker, cooler green there. What does that get us in 100 grams? Here it is. So that is a pretty good match. I would say this is not as even though. So you can see there's plenty of cooler and warmer spots, some darker and lighter points, and as you look in there, it's very beautiful. I could just imagine a pair of socks in this color and it would just be fantastic. However, I would like it to be a bit more even for what I'm looking for. The method I used for this skein was I glazed the colors, so I dyed each color separately in different layers, so that explains the different tones that you see here. If I mix them all together, they will all come out more even. There will never be a point where there's only yellow in one section or only the cooler blue or cooler green in a different section. They will all be mixed. So let's try that method for the next one. And when I mixed all the colors together without glazing, we get this color. And the color is a lot more even. It is still tonal as far as like slightly lighter and darker points and even a little bit of cool and warm areas. It is a whole lot more even than the other one. So this is exactly what I'm going for, and here's the mini for it, and I'm really happy with it. So this formula I was able to scale proportionately. I just multiplied my formula by 5 and we were good to go. The next full skein I'm going to dye is our medium pink. Again, I decided to multiply our formula by 5 to scale it up to 100 grams. So we'll start with the very light pink, and then we'll add the purple, and then we'll add the orange. All right. Now I scaled everything up times 5, and then I went ahead and added a little bit more just to warm it up a little bit, and we are left with this color. It is quite pretty, but it is different than the mini. So let's take a look at that. It's very similar, but it is slightly darker and slightly more muted. So let's see if we can brighten this up. And to be honest, I'm surprised that scaling it evenly didn't work. So let's see if we can fix that. I'm going to bring down the light pink a little bit. I'm going to bring down purple, and we'll leave the orange where it is. Maybe by removing these, it'll warm it up and brighten it up at the same time. And then we have this color, which, as you can see, is pretty spot on, if not a little bit brighter even than the original. And comparing this to the book, inspiration page, I like this even better. So that is a definite win. There is our pink. Our next color is light pink, and similar to the medium pink, I'm going to scale up the formula by 5, and I will add a little bit more orange to warm it up a bit. First we have our light pink, just barely any of that, it hardly registers. And then we have purple, a little bit more, and then we have our orange, which is a bit more than that. And that brings us to this color. It is light pink, and it is kind of a blush color, but it is darker than I need it to be. And it's actually a little bit too warm. Actually, the warmth is fine, but it's darker than I would like for this color to be. So let's lighten it up. I'm going to increase the light pink because that won't deepen it too much and it might make it a little bit brighter. I will take down the purple and I will take down the orange. And that brings us to this color, which is really lovely. I really like how peachy it is. It is more of a really light blush color, and I like the lightness of it. However, it is a little bit too blush, and I would like it to be a little bit more pink. So let's see if we can tweak that a little bit. All I'm going to do for this one is bump up the purple slightly. And here we go. This is our final color for the light pink. You can see here it is pinker than the previous, whereas this one is more peach. This one has more pink, but it still has a really nice lightness to it. Next, we're going to dye up our red color. So let's scale this up times 5, and we will have our warm red about here, truer, cooler red about here, and our navy down here. All right, what will this bring us? That gets us this color red, as soon as I dyed this up, I was surprised at how dark it was, even though it is supposed to have some deeper tones in it and some tonality, I suppose. It is darker and more muted than the mini, and so this helped me realize that the navy is actually a whole lot more potent and stronger and more concentrated of a color than the other dyes. So this navy scales differently and behaves differently when scaled than the other colors. So time to experiment to get this to match the mini better. And also when I dyed this, the dye did not fully get absorbed by the yarn. So I think I had too much going on there. Let's reduce down. I'll even reduce these guys by a bit and reduce the navy by quite a bit. What will this give us? Now we have this color. So it's much more even, which I'm happy about. However, it's too pink. Let's see if we can make that less pink. Let's up the warm red and bring down the cool red and bring down the navy. Now this is the right tone. It is warmer, it is brighter, and I like how that looks. It reminds me much more of the book cover. However, I love the tone, but it's too light. The dye also absorbed really well in this one. This section I think is a little bit too light. I just want a bit more dye than what this one has. So I'm going to up these guys a little bit, and this guy just barely. And here we have our red. So it is very similar to this, which I am happy about, but this one is a little bit deeper and darker, and it feels a bit even truer to the book. So I'm very happy with this red. The next color we're going to dye up is our beige color. Since I've noticed that our dyes have not been scaling perfectly by multiplying by 5, I decided to be on the safe side and reduce that down a bit, because I can always add more dye later. So for the 100 gram formula, I decided moving forward I will multiply that amount by 5 and then times it by 0.8. That way I'm only using 80% of what I would normally use, and I can always add some more in later if I need to. So for the beige, first we have our dark cooler brown, and these are just very small amounts here. They're not even going to register on this graph. And then we have a bit of black, and we have our light warm brown. And that brings us to a color that is pretty much exactly this. I don't have it to show you because I've dyed over it already. After dyeing this beige and liking it and seeing how it worked, I went ahead and dyed another skein just like it to use with the yellow confetti spots. However, I dyed the yellow confetti version after dyeing a batch of red yarn, and I didn't clean out my pot properly. So when I dyed the beige for that one, it came out this color, which looks awfully similar. However, I'm not sure if you can see, the beige in this one is slightly warmer. It has some more pink in it than this one. This one is cooler. This one is cooler and more neutral. This one has a slight hint of pink in the beige part. And that's because there was some red residue still in my pot when I dyed the beige. So, lesson learned, do not dye beige right after red. However, I really loved this color even more than this one. And so then I had the challenge of trying to replicate this. How do I replicate an accident? Because this color with the warmth, it's just the right amount. It's not overly pink, it's not yellow, it's just a slightly warm beige. I love it. This would be so useful, and it has a little bit more life than this one. So I decided, okay, how do I replicate red residue? I decided to add a little bit of this truer red, like just barely, and I got this color. Yes, this one also has yellow spots on it, but we'll ignore that for now. And let's compare these. Can you see a difference? This one was the original with the accident, and this one I intentionally added some red. This one is too pink, and it's a little tad darker. It's not quite matching this one. Let's try again and see if we can match the accident. I decided with this red, instead of adding just the tiniest bit, I'm literally only going to add 2 drops. Maybe that will replicate the residue from the pot before. And that gave us this color. Let's hold that up to our favorite accident and see how that looks. I think it's pretty spot on. Not sure if you can tell a difference on screen, but yes, in real life, this looks really fantastic. It's a great match. I am very happy with matching the accident, and I love it even better than the original I had planned. Our next color to dye up is our light blue. And again, for this one, learning from previous lessons, I'm not going to times the formula by 5. I'm going to use a little bit less. And first up, we have our dark cooler brown. Give a nice beigey base, and then some black. And then we have our really bright blue. And then we have our orange to help counteract that blue and turn it into more of a neutral. So this one is a little bit more. And then we have our warm purple. All right, with our combo here, that gives us this nice color. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't really match our little mini skein. Parts of it does and parts of it doesn't. It's a little bit lighter, slightly, and then there are more peachy purple spots. And so let's see if we can try again and tweak the formula a little bit more to get the color we're looking for. All right, so for this one, the only colors I'm touching are the bright blue and the orange, because I think there's enough purple in there and I like the beigey base going on. So let's just slightly make a little bit more blue and a little bit more of the orange. And I'm making very sure to mix the colors very well and move the skein around a lot while I'm dyeing it to make sure it gets nice and distributed. And here is our final color. I am very happy with the result. There's not splotches. There's not too many like pink areas. It is slightly cooler, maybe slightly more green than the other one, but it still reads as kind of a neutral blue. And I love that when I see this, I really want to ask, is it silver? Is it blue? Is it green? Is it purple? Is it peach? I'm not quite sure. It's just in the middle of all of them, and it has a lot of dimension. Our next color to dye up is our dark blue. And do you remember when I mentioned that the navy doesn't scale very well because it is so much more concentrated of a color than the other dyes? Well, we are going to run into a lot of snafus because of that for this color. So let's get into it. So for this one, I decided to scale it up. I think I may have even scaled it up exactly, like multiplied the formula by 5. I'm not quite sure why, but that's what I did. First, we have our navy, right there, fair bit. Then we have our really bright blue, and we have our purple. We have our orange to help tone everything down, and then we have our really bright pink. All right, so what will this give us? Unfortunately, it gives us this color. So in person, this looks like a really, really strange denim blue that's a bit too green. I'm just getting faded teal jeans vibes from this. And the skein did not absorb all of the dye either. There was a ton left in the pot. So that is no good, and it is quite different from what I was going for. This is a lot more green, and the navy sure didn't work either. So let's try again. I'm reducing the navy all the way down here, which is a huge difference. Then I kept everything else the same because I figured dealing with the navy and figuring that out is probably first. And I had read somewhere that adding salt to a dye bath can help it exhaust. So I added a 1/4 cup of salt, and we ended up with this color. So it is a lot brighter, that's for sure. However, it is too bright, it's too light, and it's also too pinkish. And I don't like how splotchy it looks. I don't think the salt worked, so I would not recommend that tip. I don't think it works. So let's keep trying. And because I really had a bad experience with the salt, like I think it made it splotchy and it did not help it exhaust better. So I decided to see what this exact same formula would be just without the salt, because I don't feel like that was a fair comparison because I haven't used salt in any of my other dye baths. And here is the color of the formula without salt. And so it's a lot more even. It's brighter, it's a little bit more teal. This looks duller for some reason. But yeah, so same dye, same amounts, but salt or no salt. Just kind of an interesting thing to see. After that, I decided to deal with the brightness of it. So I'm bringing back up the navy because it's too bright. I'm gonna bump up the pink a little bit because it's a bit too teal. So let's see if we can get a slightly more muted, more truer blue type of color. And we're getting there. It's on the right track. It is a more muted teal. It's getting darker, which I like. I like the depth of it. However, it's still too teal. I wonder if we can slightly tweak this to get something a little bit better. The reason I'm dyeing all of these different iterations on 100-gram skeins was because I didn't trust the scaling process of the 20-gram mini to the full skein. So I'm biting the bullet and doing all of these on full skeins. So let's see if we can keep going and make a difference. So better, still a bit too teal. Let's see what we can do. Let's increase the navy a little bit. We'll decrease the bright blue. I'll up the purple and keep the orange and the pink the same. In that case, we get this color, which honestly I absolutely love. I really love this color. The only unfortunate thing about this is I think I was distracted when I was dyeing it and putting the formula in, and so I don't think I can actually replicate this color. I've tried. So after I dyed this color, I really liked it, but I thought I remembered being a little bit distracted when I was putting the dye colors in. So I decided on the safe side, let's do another one and try it. But maybe if I had to be picky, maybe there's a little bit too much purple in here. So I'll just reduce the purple by a teeny bit for the next one. And it should be very close, just very slightly less purple. But unfortunately we get this color, which is way brighter than the other one. You would think, and it's even a whole lot more pink even. So between these two, there is quite a bit of difference. This is more of like a royal blue color and this has more teal in it. But the only thing I tweaked between the two according to the formula was the purple, which doesn't make sense. So I have no idea what happened with this color. It's quite unfortunate because it's really nice. But all right, let's just keep working till we can get a repeatable color that works well for us. All right, for the one after this, what should we tweak next? I will bump up the bright blue and I will bump up the purple and see if we can get it a little bit more even, maybe slightly darker. All right, it is darker. It is a very saturated blue, even if it is darker. Let's see if we can get this to be a little bit more muted. I'm going to take down the bright blue again. I'm really going to bump up the orange because, as we remember, when we add more orange to blue, it makes it a bit more in the middle. So let's see if that works. We got this color. It is a little bit more muted, but I don't know, it's not the right kind of muted. It's still too pinkish. I don't know, it's more purple than I want it to be. Maybe the pink is the problem, or we'll look and see. Maybe there's too much of that strong pink in there. So for this one, I'm going to get rid of this pink. And I'm to compensate with that kind of tone because I still want there to be a reddish pinkish tone. I'm going to adjust the purple to compensate, but not too much. And then we get this color. So it's definitely a lot less pink. The greens are a lot more prominent now, remembering that pink versus green is definitely a color battle. It's too green. You can see here, these are quite different from each other. Still not what I'm looking for. So I think I'm going to bring the pink back and we'll just keep tweaking. I'll bump that down and bring it back to less than what it's been. And I will bump up the navy a little bit. I'm going to bump up the light blue, the bright one. I'm going to bump up the purple. And I'm really going to bump up the orange. Let's see what this gives us. This one is really nice. I'm really liking that. I think it's almost there. I'm wondering if maybe it's a little bit too dark. I love the tone, but if I had to be picky, maybe I could do just a teeny bit less pink, so there's just a little bit in there, and just bring everything down a little bit to keep the tone, but make it not quite so heavily dark. So for the next one, I'm bringing down each of these, and then we have our blue. And this one I am super happy with. I feel like it matches the book really well. It's even better than this one. You can see that it's not quite so green, which was actually what I was hoping for. This has more of that truer blue with pink undertones in it, but it still is like, is it teal? Is it a true blue? It's a little bit there. It could go either way. It's a bit more in the middle, which I like. And yeah, I'm very happy with this final color. Our next color to dye up is brown. So let's see if we can get this one to match. And so when I scaled it up, I scaled it ×5 and then did just a little bit less, because I could always add some more dye later. So we have our light warm brown, our yellow, our truer red, purple, and our concentrated cooler dark brown. And we get this beautiful brown as a result. And in high contrast to the blue, we get it the first time. This one might be slightly lighter, but that's actually fine. And I think it is gorgeous. This one matches the bear in the book extremely well, and I think it's great. So hurrah for brown. Our next color to dye up is yellow. So again, similar to the brown, I'm going to use a little less than 5 times the formula for the mini. And we will start with our yellow, our greenish light blue, and then our orange. So when we dye that up, we get this lovely yellow. It is really close. It's not quite the same. This one is slightly cooler. There's a little bit more green and this one is more of a true butter yellow. And so I would like it to have a little bit more dye in it, because you can see there's some lighter areas and darker areas. That's mostly fine. However, I would like it to be a little bit more even than this, and I would like it to be a little bit cooler. This is airing too much on the butter side. So let's just slightly tweak it, add a bit more yellow and a bit more of our minty blue, and then we get this color, which is not too warm, not too cool. I'm very happy with this. I feel like this is a very true representation of the yellow in the book while still being cool enough for me to wear happily. So I'm very excited about this yellow, and I love how it pairs with all the other colors. Then it was time to dye up the full skein of our confetti yellow yarn. So I used as a base our beige color, and then I put yellow spots similar to the lighter version of the mini. And I am very happy with how it came out. So let's see how all of the skeins look together. So here are our final 10 colors that we scaled up from the minis. And I love how they look together. I think they look wonderful as a collection. So I set these up in a row on my counter just to keep them around, live with them a bit, kind of see if there's any changes that need to be made over time as I live with it. And after maybe a couple days, I realized, you know, one of these is not like the other. I think maybe we could do with something else. And I was feeling a little bit unsure about this confetti yarn. It is very similar to the beige, which is on purpose. Like, it's supposed to have a neutral base and then really fun confetti on top, which I do love the concept of very much. However, for this particular collection, I don't think it's quite ready for it yet. I would like to explore this idea further in the future, but I think for right now, it's better for the collection if we don't have a confetti. Everything else is a tonal, semi-solid, and seeing these together, even just taking that out, the collection looks a whole lot better already. And looking at the overall distribution of lights, mediums, darks, I can see that we are really good on the light front. We're decent in the mid-range, but we're pretty lacking on the darks. Like, we've got the blue. These really count more as mid. They're a little bit dark, but I think we could do with a darker color. And so I think what would be really great is adding a dark green back in. So let's dice them up and see how that looks. So of course I want to go back to our source of inspiration for our dark green. I do already have an idea in my head of what sort of dark green I would love to make, but I want to make sure it'll work really well for the collection. And I'm mainly drawing inspiration from the outlines of Gator, because he's always outlined in a very dark green, which is super cute. It's elsewhere in the book as well. Like on this page, there's some really nice dark green options in the paintings that I think are quite beautiful. So let's see if we can pull some of those colors out. So that we don't stray too far from what we've already done, I'm going to start by using some of the same green dyes that we used in our other one. So we'll start with a fair bit of this cooler dark green. We'll bring in some of the darker warm green, nice and yellowy. And then here is another cooler green. So let's see what this sort of formula gets us. It is quite pretty. I really do like it, but I would love it if it could be a little bit darker. So let's see if we can get a bit of a richer color in there, because I do want this to be really dark. I'm going to leave these two cooler greens the same. I'm going to bump up this yellow green because I'm also going to add this navy, and I don't want the navy to be too prominent and powerful and take away the yellowy greens that are already in there. And then we get this color, just the most gorgeous foresty green with hints of warm green undertones in it as well. I am so in love with this color. I'm really happy that I ended up taking the confetti yarn out for the moment, because this is such a great addition to the collection and I can't wait to see it worked up. So after much deliberating, experimenting, and reconsidering, we finally have our final 10 colors for the Lola Dutch collection. I am so happy with them and love seeing them all together like this. Here are our final 10 colors. I am so thrilled with these, and I love seeing them put together in different combinations. It's so much fun. I also have some exciting news about this collection. I showed this yarn to one of my local yarn shops, and they offered to host a trunk show for me at the end of February or early February. We're still figuring out the right date. So if you're in the Salt Lake City area, I would love to see you. I'll put some more details out as it gets closer, but if you're curious to see this yarn in person, that will be a great opportunity to do so. And also what that means is I'm in the process of building up some stock for the trunk show. So to that end, if you are interested in any of the yarn in this video, all of it is going to be in my Etsy shop. And between now and the end of 2024, you can get 15% off everything in my store between now and the end of 2024. If you make a purchase, that would help me out so much towards helping me build up stock for this trunk show. There will be lots to choose from in my Etsy shop, and I am putting all of the yarn from this video in cute little sets. So here is one of the sock sets available. I'll have some bundled yarn, so here's 200-gram skeins, one of the confetti yarns, and a coordinating tonal, and some mini skein sets. And here is a different bundle with 400-gram skeins together. This one I think I'm going to call Merry and Bright, because like it could be Christmassy if you want it to, but it doesn't have to be. They're just really cute together. So yeah, please check those out if you're interested, and you can use the code Let's Lola for 15% off everything in the shop. And that's as a big thank you for watching this video, supporting me, and helping me get going with this collection for the trunk show at the end of January. And so all of the sock sets, minis, and bundles will be in stock, ready to ship. I usually ship pretty quickly, but I will also have pre-orders available in my shop for the final colors. So if there's a particular color or combo that you're interested in, I want this many of this color on this base and all of these things, you can totally do that. I will dye to order. You can pre-order that now, also with the 15% off. I will ship that out in about 5 weeks. So I'll go through the bases now. First we have our lace weight mohair silk. This one is called Vignette lace. It is 50 grams, 437 yards, a single ply lace with 70% super kid mohair and 30% mulberry silk. Then we have another lace weight. This is the Surrey silk, and the name for this one is Owl Moon lace. It is also 50 grams, 437 yards, 65% baby Surrey alpaca, and 35% mulberry silk. Next we have the tried and true from this video. This is our 2-ply fingering weight called Menagerie Fingering. It's 115 grams, 427 yards, 2-ply, 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon. Great for socks. Then we have our Curio Sport. This one is 100 grams, 328 yards, 3-ply sport weight, 100% non-superwash fine merino at 21.5 microns. And next we have a DK weight yarn called Soiree DK. It is 100 grams, 246 yards, a 4-ply DK with 90% extra fine superwash merino. That's 19.5 microns. If you have not felt 19.5 micron merino, please try it. It feels like butter. Like, I have not felt a softer merino than this super fine kind. It is just incredible. So it's 90% extra fine merino and 10% recycled nylon. It's amazing. It feels incredible. I already have plans to knit a sweater on it next. And then we also have Cider Worsted. It's 100 grams, 218 yards, a 2-ply worsted, also with 85% extra fine non-superwash merino, also 19.5 microns. This one and the DK are just the softest merinos I have ever felt. And this one is non-superwash, the DK is superwash. Interesting. And then 15% mulberry silk. So that shine is just so pretty. And then we have another DK. This one is called Bro Boucle. It is 100 grams, 240 yards, single ply boucle, and it's 100% superwash merino. And I have another DK weight base, which is called Wilder DK. But I don't have any full skeins of this one because it's already been used in a project, which I'm so excited about. I made Christmas stockings for my whole family with this, and I just am so happy with it. But here's a little nugget. So the details on this yarn, it's 100 grams, 292 yards, which is great for a DK, 3 ply, 85% non-superwash merino, 15% Tessa silk. So it's called Wilder because it's a little bit more on the rustic side, but it is still soft. So comparing Soiree DK to Wilder DK, Soiree is definitely softer, but if a variety of different yarn breeds and types, non-superwash included, doesn't bother you, you'll be super happy with this one also. It is a very soft rustic, but it's not like the ultra soft Soiree, if that makes sense. Like I said, I made some Christmas stockings out of this and just love it, and especially after washing and blocking, it softens and just smooths and feels so good. I really cannot wait to make a sweater out of that one. Like, I really want to make like a steeked colorwork cardigan out of this. I think it would just be so fantastic. So that's definitely in the cards for this yarn. I have way too many ideas and not enough hands to knit them. But we're not done yet. We need to give these colors some names. It was really fun to look through the book and try and pull some names for the colors from the book directly to kind of further that relationship and cohesion there. I really like doing that. So if you ever look at the book and you're like, oh, I see where this name came from, or I see why she called that one that, that's kind of fun. However, it was also really important to me to pick names that have some sort of meaning or feeling associated with it that kind of gives you like a warm, comfy feeling that makes you feel really good and nice and like kind of like, ooh, this feels good, like reminds you of good, nostalgic, happy things. So I wanted it to be meaningful and happy, even if you've never seen the Lola Dutch book before, or you're not familiar with the words or anything like that, because probably, if I'm honest, most people aren't familiar with this book. So it's important to like have understandable, feel-good names. So I tried hard to pick names that did pull from the book, but were generic enough that people could kind of have their own associations with the names too. So let's go through them. I am happy to introduce to you Whipped Cream, Pastries, I Love You So Much, Grand Idea, Light Reading, Morning Walk, Amazing Day, Bon Appetit, Et Voila, and Tea and Toast. I love the names. I love that they are connected to the book and pull from it, but I also love the just general warm fuzzies that come from hearing all the names together. I think it's so much fun, and oh man, just look at that combo. I just randomly picked it up, but so good. Anyway, I just love the feeling of this collection. It makes me feel really good and cozy. Like, I just want to like curl up with some light reading and tea and toast and just have a grand old time. So it's giving me all the warm, fuzzy, happy vibes, and I hope that really comes across with this collection in general. It was important to me to pick bases that would be super luxurious and soft and cozy and help you to feel special, and I just wanted the yarn itself, the colors, the names, the inspiration to be just lots of happy, cozy, feel good, like all the good vibes, like in a collection, and just kind of spread the joy into the world through love of yarn and fiber and all the cozy goodness that goes along with that. So thank you so much for coming along with me on this journey. I know this is a long video. So yeah, if you're interested in 15% off everything in my shop, including the pre-orders, Just type in the promo code Let's Lola and you can get 15% off everything between now and the end of the year. So I hope you have a wonderful holiday season full of festive cheer, all the fall and winter vibes, and I will see you again later. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you so much for joining me on this process. Take care and see you next time.
Close the curtain, brew some herbal tea. Reach out for me. Oh, and take my hand and lead, even when I disagree. Rest sweetly. Close the curtain, brew some herbal tea.